This is your macroeconomics video on aggregate supply. As we learned when we were doing our aggregate supply and demand graph, there are two aggregate supply lines. So the first one, in the short run, the aggregate supply line is upward sloping, and in the long run, it's vertical. Your upward sloping short run aggregate supply line is what we'll refer to as the normal supply line. Think of the short run as a period of 1 to 2 years. And the long run is something much longer than that, like a 20-year average. Now, in the short run, it's upward sloping because businesses cannot perfectly predict all of the possible things that are going to come their way. Input prices, the amount of labor costs, things that could confuse or make it difficult to accurately predict how much they should supply and at what prices. In the long run, everything can be adapted to. So if the government raises the minimum wage or they can't get access to an input, in the long run, all of those things kind of fix themselves, or we adjust to them and can make the correct decisions with them, which makes the long run line or the long run supply line vertical in the long run. So let's take a look at short run. So short run is upward sloping in similar ways to why market supply is upward sloping. If we start out at price level 1 and at a quantity that we're producing at Y1, remember, assume if everything else is equal, including the cost it takes to produce something, as the price that you can sell your goods at rises, so does the profit margin. And that leads, at least in the short run, suppliers to want to supply more goods and services at higher prices, because that's how you make more profit. Now, there are a couple of other reasons why the short run supply line is upward sloping. And we're going to talk in two separate videos about two different theories. Both of them have to do with when the price level that's expected differs from what the price level is actually at. So let's assume here that we have an equilibrium here. We'll call it price level E because that's our expected price level. Remember, wherever our equilibrium is on short run supply and demand, that's where people are going to assume the market prices are. So imagine we have a downward sloping demand line here as well. Differences occur though when the price level suddenly becomes higher or lower than what we expected. So here in the yellow portion of the supply line, let's say our demand line cuts through our supply line somewhere up here in the upper portion of our short run supply line. That would make our equilibrium higher than the current PLE. So if you expected prices to be at PLE and now they're somewhere higher, that would cause a business to want to sell a greater quantity of goods and services, which along the horizontal axis is that larger amount of GDP. But however, if it turns out that price levels are lower than what they had expected, now suddenly the business is not raising as much revenue as they thought they were going to have. So if the price level or our demand cuts into our short run supply somewhere down here at the bottom in this pink and red area, then that means that suppliers will want to produce less goods and services than they had previously predicted. So we're going to talk about two different theories as to why this is. And in each of these theories, there will be two separate videos. There's some type of market imperfection that happens. So again, something happens, we didn't predict it perfectly. There was an imperfection that businesses now have to respond to in the short run. And because of that, the output that the companies are producing is going to deviate from whatever it had planned at the expected price level. And again, the expected price level is also where the natural rate of unemployment was. So they could either hire more workers or less workers from what they had predicted.